On a basically we're all black. I mean, my first class in America in West Virginia, my professor called me a nigger. If someone ever told me that shit right now, oh, I'm gonna go crazy.
As an African living in the United States, where is your home?
Welcome to Am I Too Loud, the podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to Am I Too Loud, the podcast with Sophie, aka the Odditty, and my Guillermo, Donald. Hi, Donald. Why are you drinking when we're about to start the intro? You're a crackhead because you only chose to drink that drink because we started the video.
You have to. This is my intro.
What is your intro? You guys, today my manager was like listening to the my manager was talking to me and Donald was right beside me. Hi, Ivy. And my manager was like, we love Donald on the podcast. We think he brings a very dry humor to the podcast. And I'm like, Donald is such a dry person that I love that somebody else knows that he's like, he has a very dry sense of humor because he thinks like he's like Kevin Hart. And I'm like, no, you're more of like a Dave Chappelle.
Oh, so dry is a good thing. You know, this entire time I was thinking dry. You think Dave Chappelle is not funny?
No, I think he's hilarious. I'm not saying, well, I said you were like a Dave Chappelle. I didn't say you were Dave Chappelle.
Yeah, it's like
you're like, if Dave Chappelle is 100%, you're like 0.1.
It's like if I raise this cup and I'm like, oh, look, vampire blood. Is that what you mean?
This is your problem. You see, when you try to be funny, it doesn't work out. It has to come effortless, Donald.
Okay.
That's my issue with you.
Okay.
But that's not the point because this is a special episode because guess what month we're in, Donald? Guess what month?
The month of love.
No, the month of blackness. Woohoo! Guys, happy Black History Month. It is the month of love, but it's also the month of Black History. I don't know. It's Black History Month in America.
Black or love?
Both.
Okay.
What is wrong with you? Why would you even pick that? Black is love. I love Black love. Anyways, the point is, it is Black History Month, guys, and this is a special Black History Month episode. And I think this is going to be such a very interesting podcast episode because you guys know we talk a lot about identity on the podcast. Everything I speak through, or every time I talk on the podcast, I always talk about it from a point of identity and nationality and where I'm from in my history and my culture. And this month is so special because Black history is such an important part of the American experience, and I wanted to talk about it. And when me and Donald were thinking about what episodes to film today, we had so many ideas for it. And then when we finally realized, oh wait, shoot, it's Black History Month. It makes sense to do a video about Black history, a podcast about Black history. And it just was so seamless. And we had so many different facets and ways we're going to come at the podcast. But this is not going to be a lecture. It's not going to be like some educative conversation. It is genuinely. This is going to be, I think, the most genuine, raw, authentic, vulnerable conversation about race that I think you would ever see on the internet. So brace yourself before we get started, because I think me and Donald have we have very similar views about Blackness and all that conversation. However, we're also very open. And we are curious about the other types of views that could be out there.
You know how to do this thing very well.
I am so good at it. So we're going to start there. If you're not interested in like Black history or Blackness and you're like, oh my God, whatever the case may be, check your privilege at the door. And that's me being so rude, and I'm not sorry. I lied. I need you to understand that this is an episode that you need to listen to if you're Black, if you identify as African, because I believe the title of this podcast is going to be, Am I Black or Am I African? I think this is a very important conversation to have regardless of how you identify, because I don't think you ever lose knowledge, right? I think it's important for you to just have knowledge, however it comes, however shape that is. And so this conversation is going to be important, and I think I would love for y'all to just listen to it and let us know in the comments. If you're listening on this on Spotify, let us know in the comments how you feel. Be very vulnerable and honest. If you feel very weird or you feel like you're shy, definitely send an anonymous voicemail on the website amitoloud.com, or just comment on YouTube as well, because I think that's where we usually put our video content. La da 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 da. We're done with the intro. The biggest question I'm going to ask Donald first is, do you identify as Black or African?
African.
Really? Tell me why.
So I was born in Africa.
Period.
No, do you identify as Black or African?
I identify as African.
Why?
Because I don't have a blue passport. And I also was not born in America. I was born in Nigeria. Now, before we get this episode started, I went through the process, guys, of finding the definition of Black the definition of African and the definition of African American. Because I don't play. Okay, right. I'm educated. Okay, I'm a smart woman. So, Black. The definition of Blackness can encompass a range of meanings depending on context. In a cultural or social sense, it often refers to the identity, experiences, and perspectives associated with people of African descent or those who identify, that's important there, identify as Black. It can relate to shared histories, cultural practices, traditions, and struggles that have shaped the Black community globally. Globally is huge here. Blackness can also encompass diversity within itself, reflecting varied experiences based on geography, language, and individual identities. Again, individual identities. It is a term that acknowledges both collective experiences and individual uniqueness within the broader framework of African heritage and identity. So after reading that definition, I identify as both. I think I am both Black and African American. Because if within the cultural and societal context.
You mean Black and African?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I identify as both Black and African because I don't think unless you are African American, and African American, I'm going to explain what that means. I believe Blackness has to do with your skin color, one, and your background or cultural heritage or background in a sense. Okay.
I agree.
You agree? Yeah. Okay. So now I'm going to define what African American means. African American typically refers to people in the United States who are of African descent, tracing their ancestry back to Africa, primarily from sub-Saharan regions. The term gained prominence during the civil rights movements of the 1960s as a way to assert cultural and historical identity. It encompasses a diverse group of individuals with varied cultural backgrounds, including descendants of enslaved Africans brought to America during the transatlantic slave trade, as well as more recent immigrants from Africa or the Caribbean who have become part of the African American community. The term reflects a shared heritage and experiences shaped by centuries of history, struggle, resilience, and cultural contributions within the American society. When I read that meaning, I believe that people can be both African American and African. I don't think it needs to be one and the same. And we'll talk about that as we go through the episode, because I tend to hear a lot of people divide that, right? Because we watched a video earlier today, me and Donald, when we were doing research about this episode. And it was a Jubilee video where it was people who were saying, pick the people who are African versus African American. That was the entirety of the video. And two particular girls. One girl decided that her parents were both Ghanaian, but she identified as African American. And another girl whose parents are both, I think they were Eastern African, and she identified as African. And I remember when I saw that, even though she was born here in America, and I realized it honestly makes no sense that you have to pick one side, because essentially you can be both, because you can trace your heritage back to Africa that directly, because you do have, you know, African parents who came here, your first generation, whatever that is. And also you are African American because you were born in American soil and you were raised as an American. Your parents might have cultural values that add to your history or to your culture and whatever. But at the end of the day, you were raised in America. It's such a different experience, no matter how much your parents might try at home to make you feel like you're in Nigeria, you're learning the language. The fact that you were born in America affords you a certain level of privilege that Africans would never get to have born back home. Does that make sense? Okay. Final definition before we start getting into the real conversation is, what is an African? Who is an African? African refers broadly to people, cultures, and things related to the continent of Africa. It encompasses a vast diversity of ethnic groups, languages, traditions, and histories across the continent's 54 recognized countries. I hear people talk about, like, I went to Africa, or I went to Africa, and there are 54 whole countries. Where in Africa did you go to? Africans trace their ancestry to various regions and civilizations that have developed over thousands of years, contributing significantly to global history, culture, and civilization. The term African acknowledges the rich and multifaceted tapestry of identities, languages, religions, and traditions that characterize the continent and its people. It's important to recognize that Africa is not a monolith, but a continent of immense diversity and complexity. Okay. Let's have a conversation about Blackness, Africanness, African Americanness, Afro, Latino, Black American, all of it. What are your first thoughts after all those conversations, Donald?
So a lot.
It's
First
a
of
lot.
all, I definitely do identify as Black.
Yes.
From this definition.
Yes.
Right? Because I feel like when you look at the tapestry and you look at the people who like really coined the movement of like Blackness, right? I think that also came from a clear understanding of what it meant to be African.
Yeah.
And what the African in African American means.
Yeah.
Right? Because like I feel like when people are like, oh, I'm African American, you are saying you are African and American
at the same time.
Right?
Exactly.
But like with the definition of Africa that we have here with like the culture and all the, obviously there's that gap. So it makes sense why you would want to make it its own thing. But ignoring the fact that like there is an African part, knowing whether you understand the full depth. Because even us as African, like we're Nigerians, so we don't really know the full scope of what it means to be African. There's still so much more that we also need to understand. So that's like what I'm getting from it.
So my biggest issue with Blackness, or like folks who identify with being Black, is the lack of homogeneity that is across the board. And what that means is that...
Thank you.
What I'm trying to say with that is, I wish we were more together in a sense, because I think we would go farther if we were together. But also our biggest strength, which is our identity, our culture, our traditions, our swagger, is also our biggest weakness. Because what that means is we're all so very drawn and empowered by our culture that we don't want to share with everybody else. And you see that within Blackness across the board. Like a Nigerian is so arrogant and so Nigerian that we're going to be for Ghanaians from now till tomorrow. Even within Nigeria, you see that within culture, right? Igbo versus Yoruba, Hausa versus Fulani, Edo versus Yoruba. Like you see that happen within the African American experience. Like, oh, you're light skin versus you're dark skin, and colorism plays a huge factor in that. Or you're from the East Coast versus the West Coast, you're Southern versus LA. You know what I mean? Like you're Afro-Latino, but you're like the light skin Afro-Latino, you're darker and you have an Afro. Like the things that keep us down oftentimes definitely stem from slavery and, white colonization. But we continue and perpetuate those conversations. Like, this is not, at some point, we have to be very, very honest with ourselves and say, colonization has a huge factor and as we deal with everything we go through. But we also, as a people, constantly perpetrate the same rhetoric that has been put in us by the colonial masters, in a sense. You know what I mean? And I think that is what's unfortunate when we have this conversation. Because I saw a TikTok, and I think you pulled that up, about this, I don't know who was saying it, a Cuban, was it a Cuban actor, musician, someone? Sorry, y'all.
I think he's like a comedian.
Like a Cuban comedian who essentially was talking about what it is to be Cuban. And I think the host at that point was asking him, oh, you're Black? I thought you were Black, or I assumed you were Black. And he's like, I don't think you're Black. And he was like, well, we're all Black, right? Because we've focused too much on where the boat dropped us off versus where we were picked up at the end of the day, right? So the idea that if you are African American, because you cannot trace your heritage down to some village or country in Africa, you can't relate to that experience. Therefore, you are not African, in itself is frustrating but understandable. Does that make sense? Like, I don't fault anyone who's African American who is not going to do Ancestry DNA or 23andMe or whatever to try to find where they're from, because we don't even know how accurate that is, right? who's just going to be like, this is what I know. America is all I know. I'm just going to focus on here. I don't fault them for that, because it oftentimes feels like a lost battle to then decide one day, oh, I might do Ancestry DNA. Okay, I'm 56% Ghanaian, so I'm going to go to Ghana and then decide I'm Ghanaian today. That identity is so hard to get, to understand, especially if you're not born to do that. Like, we understand how important it is from our culture perspective. Like, even me as a Yoruba girl, right? Even learning my culture is hard. And I have family who's all Yoruba. So imagine someone with an American background having to start from scratch to learn a culture that is constantly evolving as well. Like, I think it's hard and unfortunate. But I think that's also our biggest struggle. And I think that's why this conversation has to happen. Because when we talk about Black History Month and Black history in America, I am very kind of in the middle, right? Because when I came to America when I was 15, 16 years old. And so my first 16 years were in Africa. I was in Nigeria. And then I am 27 right now. So I've spent 10 years in America. I can't consider myself fully African American because, first of all, I don't have the passport, but also I wasn't born here. So my high school experience, all of that was very much Nigerian. Yeah. However, I can be empathetic. I can be understanding to the American experience, with the American experience, because I've lived here for 10 years. And I understand
and that 10 years.
That 10 years was intense, because that's like
imagine the impact.
The impact alone of like especially 17 to 27 are such pivotal years in your life, especially with social media, thankfully. So I'm able to keep a hand on the pulse back home in Nigeria while also living the experience here. And I will be stupid to not understand that the Black experience in America is a difficult one.
Compared to because it is. Born.
And mind you, I even have privilege because I'm African. Like, my name, my background even holds even more weight when I'm looking for jobs, when I'm looking for opportunities here, because the American context still puts Africans before African Americans in a lot of cases. So even society here makes it so hard to be Black, to be African American in that context. And I think that's so exhausting. So I don't know, I feel like this is already coming off so deep and so intense, because it is.
Right.
Like, the conversation is not an easy one at all to have. So because I know a lot of Africans don't understand it, and it's so hard to explain to you guys. Like, every time I have and the only way to explain to you guys is when I have an African creator come to America, the way they experience America here always makes me laugh. And I'll give you 2 examples. I had a friend who's he is honestly the largest Black travel creator in the world at this point that I know of. I might be wrong here, but with his amount of followers and everything, he is. And I remember when he first came to America, he reached out to a ton of white creators, Black creators, everybody, and no one gave a fucking shit that he was here. And he was so shocked, because he's like, where's the collaboration? Where's the drive? Where are the people here? And I'm like, America is a whole different ballgame, because first of all, you're not the majority. Second of all, white people don't give a shit about Black people in a lot of sense. And no matter how hard you try to climb the totem pole here, they will always find a way to keep you where you are, because you are not white. And already that's an issue. And we see that within the political climate as well here. Like, Blackness in itself is always put down. I have another creator who's, again, a huge creator in Nigeria, who came into America, and he's like, no one is responding to my DMs, no one's responding to my calls, these people don't care. I'm like, yeah, like, for the most part, white creators don't need Black creators with the Black dollar, so they don't care. The Black or African American creators who are here, the audience is different. Unless they're particularly interested in Africa, they really don't give a fuck that you're an African creator, because what do you have to offer them? It's a different mindset, because in America, it's just a different ballgame. America is such a unique country to live in, especially when you talk about race relations. And especially now that we have Trump in office, people underestimate how impactful it is to be Black. And we even talk about it from the Super Bowl and everything that's been going on, which we'll get to in this video. I feel like I've been yapping so much, but I get so passionate about this. I get so passionate about it. But go ahead, Donald.
I think I like to break it down.
Okay.
From I think the existing in America as a white person, which is something that we will never understand.
Yes.
Right? But think about this from a thought experiment.
Okay.
There's a certain level of thinking, or just a thought process, that happens.
Yeah.
When you're not white.
Yes.
Right? And I think I'm so interested to hear your explanation or your understanding of that thought process, right? Because you've talked about the travel creator, right? Creators who come here and they're trying to work, even for us, trying to integrate and work with Like, think about the thought process that we have to go through and the mental gymnastics, right? Better word for it. To even try to even integrate and move and understand and be cautious
It's
and
different.
like, you know. But when you're here and you're white, right? You don't have to play that same game.
You're not playing a game.
And then let's add another layer. And this is something when you talked about how diverse Africa is, right? Africa is very diverse.
It's too diverse.
Right?
Some might say it's too diverse.
And I think one of the biggest things, like, for us, trying to understand, like, even us trying to relate to someone who's from Ethiopia or someone who's from South Africa.
We don't even travel. We don't travel within the countries.
It's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Now, do you think with whiteness, right, because I think when we say, like, being African or being Black is diverse, it's like we're talking about, like, you can break it apart into a million pieces.
Yes.
You can do the same with whiteness.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you think that's like a foundation of the problem? Because you talked about colonialism. And I don't have facts to back this up, so I don't really want to, like, you know, make that like the center of my argument. But I'm also thinking about, like, how the state Africa was in before colonialism, right?
Yeah.
And how diverse and how that was also affecting our way of life. Because Africa getting to how diverse it is right now was not just a result of colonialism. It was a result of, like, who we are as a people.
Yeah.
And what does that have to do with, like, how we fix it?
That's such a deep question, and we're both two very uneducated people.
So
it's hard to. I think this is like two people just talking about the subject. So bear that in mind, guys. I think that a huge problem we do have is the diversity, and it is very different from whiteness. However, I also think that our lack of interest to find each other is also our biggest issue. So, like, as a Nigerian, I can't say growing up that I ever had any interest in going to any other African country except for the West.
Why?
And I was raised that way because I was raised that way. Like, the goal wasn't to go visit Kenya or South Africa. The goal was to go to America, right? And I see that across the board when we even think about excursions or travel, right? We're going to the Western spaces.
Think about the safari.
The safari, like, why are we going to see lion when we can go to New York in the cold? Makes no sense to me, right? In many ways, I think that is our biggest issue, because even within colonization, and not to put fault on our ancestors here, if the reason why it was so, and again, I don't know if this is true or not, it was so
it's true
easy in quotations, right, to have us attack each other, is because of that lack of interest in unification that we have. And now, this is not me being a conspiracy theorist, right? But I wonder why that is. Specifically for Blackness or Black people, it feels like there is something just like forcing us to not be unified. Because I always think about it from a space of, if I ever saw a video of someone from Jamaica, right, or Brazil, and they're Black, yeah, I might support them, but there's also something there that's like, oh, they're not me, they're not Nigerian, or they're not.
Because you probably have a barrier and you think you don't understand it.
Yes, right. And there's something so interesting about how a lot of Black, again, this is such a broad statement to make, but it feels like we tend to not be interested in learning about our same people, right? Like, there's just a lack of interest there. And again, everything just goes back to colonization, because I can argue and say, well, it's because, like, that's what we're taught, right? When you're ingrained so much to look at white people as like gods and the people, because I remember my first time my grandfather, who was at the time 80 years old, came to America. I remember we were driving down the road, like, from New York to DC, and he was like, oh my God, white people have so much brain and they're so smart, look at how clear their road is. And in my head, I was like, I don't think that's a white people thing. I just think it's like, westernization, I don't know. I was like, that rhetoric of white being better than Blackness because of their skin color, because of something that you think is right, is something that's been passed down for so long, right? Like, it hurts my heart to think about it in that way, but it's so prevalent, right? Like, when we watched the video about Jubilee, and I feel like you guys should go watch it, and it was 2 Africans and 1 African American girl who were all sort of figuring out who's African and who's African American, and the entire video, when we were watching it, the reasons why someone was African versus African American was so crazy to me. Like someone would be like, oh, you said you're an aerospace engineer, you have to be African. Oh, you dress so swaggy, you have to be African American. Stereotypes, right? Well, if you look at the tape, we all look the same. From Brazil to Nigeria to South Africa to, well, East Africans have a big forehead. But for the most part,
okay, so
we all look the same.
The East African point, because honestly, I'm playing devil's advocate in a way in this conversation. Could it be because we are just human, right?
We're too human?
We are human.
Because everybody's human.
Yes.
So why is it us?
No, that's the thing. I don't think in this conversation there's a difference between being like difference in terms of like, aside from history, right? There's a difference in how we behave between blackness and whiteness. I don't think so. Okay. Because if we try to explain it,
honestly, you see where I'm going? No. Okay. But as you were talking, I realized something. Okay. I think why it's harder for us to sort of connect with the diaspora and everybody else is because of slavery and how it worked. So think about it, right? We're the only group of people who were shipped to so many different places. Yeah. Like so many. Yeah. Like Jamaicans, Haitians, like Liberians, South Africans, like Cubans, Nigerians, Ghanaians, like, and our culture is so potent and so connected directly to ourselves that it's hard to try to convince someone whose reality and belief system is so solid that they have to think a certain way. Yeah. And I think that is my biggest issue. Yeah. Because for me, I always think about it from the perspective of the little things, right? Like maybe the darker girl is not as pretty as the light-skinned girl, right? Those little nuances within every culture is prevalent in Asia with Indians, right? When they talk about the caste system and like the lighter and dark mix, stuff like that is human nature, terrible parts of human nature, right? Where it's dark, but within our community, there's levels to that, right? There's levels to like whether you're from this certain place and so you're a certain way, you're richer because you appear this way, and it's all at the end of the day a measure of proximity to whiteness. And that is my biggest issue. Yeah, because that's the biggest problem. The problem is the comparison. And it's every fucking because if you race. Isolate it, because that's the issue. Oh my God. I just got like, you know when you get like a ding, 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 ding. Think about reading in Nigeria, right? Yeah. In Nigeria, we're taught about the, what's it called? Like the warriors and the kings who had slaves, the villages who sold slaves to each other, right? Who would dominate. That's human nature. Yeah. If you try to explain how the Romans were roaming, it's the same way how the Jaja of a Pope was like. Because it's the same thing. On my days when I was in secondary school, high school, I remember when we would talk about Greek mythology and the Roman Empire. It all sounded so familiar to African empires, right? Because we all did the same thing. Yeah. In many ways, the only issue within like caste systems and all that stuff was financial. So money equals power. That's what it was always, until the white man shifted and it became race. So it became, because I am a certain color, you are less than me. And that shifted the trajectory of a lot of things down the line. And when you're talking right now, like, that makes sense. Because whether that you're Asian, whether you're whatever it is, right? Every beauty standard, every goal is to be close to whiteness. Because in this scenario, in westernization, whiteness holds that power. Like, ultimately, think about like the whiter you are in many ways right now is like, well, if you're Russian and then you're like American, that's it, right? Who's the whitest of the whites? You also have like Italian. But think about Italians are not what they call like prime white. Yeah, I think you're talking about. Honestly, I don't know. I think about like, because even they went through a lot of shit. Also minority. Yeah, they're a minority. Like if you think about it, like the browner you are, the less you are on the totem pole. Like I don't get it. No, the thing is, there's something to be said about Americans. Yes. Because remember, Americans were the rebels. The people who came and created America were people who like were running away from Europe. Didn't want to be part of like that system, right? Yeah. That's why. So like and then they created a war system in place instead. Shout out Hamilton. But you see what's crazy? It's like I think about boarding school, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're a junior and you get bullied by the seniors, and then when you become a senior, you perpetrate the same cycle and then you bully.
Yes.
Right? It's a human thing.
Yes.
It's not a good thing. It's a human thing.
That's not a whiteness thing.
It's not a whiteness thing. It's a
Yes.
human thing.
Yes.
And I see that within the American context. Like, oh, we suffer, so now we're going to find people who are going to suffer too. And we're going to perpetrate this hundreds of years of slavery and all this shit that went down in America. But I still think that the biggest issue within the Black diaspora is that lack of unity. And I don't know how to fix it. I don't think there's a way to fix it.
It's not fixable.
It's not, right?
It's not fixable. I don't think the goal should be to fix.
Because to bridge the gap? Because I always say it. I like to use the phrase
goal is to educate. Remember, I always
you talk about this a lot.
The goal is to educate, because this is a product of divisiveness, right?
For example,
let's use a tool.
Okay.
The gun.
Okay.
How did we go from Africa was a continent that used machetes and like all these other things to fight wars.
Yeah.
The white man created the gun.
Yeah.
What was the point of creating the gun?
Yeah.
To be honest, it was as a tool for them to use for control.
Yeah.
Right? And there are other tools that have gone away from like just the gun to the bomb to like, you see how they're always searching, but it's also like the psychological aspect. And I think like there's no education to like really explain how clever, right? And the intention that is, being inserted into like to create that divide.
Yeah.
That's not being taught. They're teaching history. Nobody's talking about the why. Nobody's talking about the people. Nobody's connecting the dots.
Yeah.
But they use an example like Hitler. Why? Because it was the Jews?
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? It's like, what about like all the people who like technically are African heroes? The person who named Mary Slessor came and stopped the killing of twins.
Twins and
what's the name? Herbert Macaulay. All the people that we hold, like, think about it. Like, who is the guy on the Nigerian kobo? The coin.
Yeah, the coin.
White people.
Back to, are we Black or African? Because as we're talking about that, I oftentimes, so again, we talked about being Nigerian and how that's a huge factor in like the conversations we have. And it's Black History Month. And I wouldn't lie and say that I oftentimes feel a misplaced sense of, I don't know what to do here, right? I can't understand it. I can't relate to it because I can't. Like, at the end of the day, like, I did not grow up in America. I live in America now, but I didn't grow up here. So it's a learned experience to be Black in this country. Like, no matter what, and you choose to partake in it or not. Either way, the system puts you in it. So when I see uppity Africans, because there are uppity Africans who talk about like, oh, Black Americans are this, and we're only going to focus on ourselves. That oftentimes is a privilege to do so. Because you're weaponizing your privilege as an African within the ideas or eyes of whiteness to then perpetrate some more, honestly, stereotypes and issues down to the folks who look exactly like you. That's always been my biggest issue. And so, like, how do we fix it? And I know you said it's not fixable, but how do we start the conversation, right? Because when I even see these channels do the bridge the gap, African or American, are you African versus are you African American, I am filled with such annoyance. Right. Because they don't fix the problem. They don't talk about it.
They don't close the loop.
They don't close the fucking loop.
And I think
it's always, you end it with like, you're leaving the conversation still feeling very raw.
Exactly.
Because like, again, I go back to that Jubilee fucking video, because if you have not seen it, we're going to try to link it in the description of the podcast on YouTube. It's 2 Africans and 1 African-American girl. And in the comments, it's a ton of Africans and even African-Americans talking about how this African-American woman was very disrespectful.
She kept on saying sorry.
She kept saying, I'm so sorry you're African, go here. I'm so sorry you're African. And I don't fault her for it, because even if there's a difference between an African-American person who's lived their entire life in America, whose only source of sort of like life is to survive America. Like, imagine someone whose family and history were all slaves, and then they finally just fought their way through, and you're just trying to survive, whether that's through any means necessary, right? And you're not telling the person, oh, by the way, you might have history in Ghana or Nigeria, so you maybe learn your history. Who the has time for that? Because my T-Mobile bill is coming in the mail tomorrow. Right. My life is, at this point, Africa, because Africa is not going to give me food when I need to make sure I have a life to live in this country that I'm in right now. For experiences like that, I can't fault or argue and say, find where you're from, because it doesn't make a difference.
Speed. Yeah.
It's a different space, a different speed. And even there's so much repercussions to even going back home, right? We've seen that happen in Ghana with the year of return. And a lot of folks who are living in the country saying, these people from the diaspora are coming, they're taking over, the dollar amount is increasing, da, 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 da. There's so much that we don't think through about the experience. So it feels complicated. It feels exhausting.
I think, okay, to come back to that Jubilee episode, right? What way can they kind of like close out? I think humanity, right? Because borderline, we're all human.
Yeah.
And, you know, the uppity African forgets, like they just like forget, because let's not even talk, I was going to say love, but I think it's humanity. Remembering that like on a base layer, we're all humans.
Not even human. On a base layer, we're all black. It.
No. Yes.
The humanity.
That's the thing. It's like if you
look at me in the eye right now. No, hold on. Oh my god, guys! Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Sophie. Everybody calls me the Odditty. If I wasn't speaking like this, you might not know that I'm f***ing African. Like I can speak and I'm so you're bouncing any bono to switch and say any bono because what's a switch insane. Show understand like.
But you're not gonna understand the kind
switch it up.
No,
like,
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like this, like even this
at the core.
This conversation, the way we're having this conversation.
So and like yes. I wish you guys understand. And I swear this is like I feel like I'm going on a tangent here because I don't know how to explain this to people who aren't in America. But I think the only reason I'm able to speak so passionately about this and I feel so passionate about this relation is because I fucking wish we were all together. And it feels like a dream.
Yeah.
It feels like a fucking dream. Like, do you know how fucking powerful we would be as a unit? Do you know how fucking powerful the Black experience is? Like, Jesus, like I want to fucking scream. Like when I see conversations where people are like, oh, Tala is an uppity South African because she's winning Afrobeats, this and that. Oh, hip hop is this and that. Oh my fucking, they don't give a shit. They don't care. These people don't care. They don't care about us. And unless we start to care about ourselves and realize the power we have in being together, we're going to do this cycle we're like hamsters in a fucking wheel.
Yeah.
And the white man is the one that's spinning the wheel as we're running inside.
Think about it, like
spinning the wheel as we're running inside.
The entire uppity African, what's the difference between that and Beyonce winning album of the year with Cowboy Carter?
Tell me about it.
No, let's be honest. Let's be honest. What's the difference?
Like, I remember... Sorry, guys. I got a bit passionate there. I'm not going to apologize. I take that back.
Which part?
You know.
The entire episode.
Because I look at it from this perspective, and this is me just talking now. I remember whenever me and Donald brainstorm ideas for YouTube videos, I remember when I tell him, I'll be like, oh, I can't post that because the person who posted it is light skinned, so it wouldn't hit the same. I can't post that video. It's not going to hit well because they don't care about me. I'm dark skinned. It wouldn't work. Oh, I can't post that because I don't have makeup on in that video. I do better when I have makeup on. I might wear a wig this time around because it's going to do better this way. I might speak in an accent. I might not speak. It's constant. The dance is constant. I'm running in the hamster loop constantly because Blackness is so bold. It's so vibrant. And the folks who are in power, whether we like it or not, in many ways are the ones who are spinning the wheel and we're just running. I wonder what it would look like if we all just work together. And it doesn't make sense because it's not possible because we're all fighting our own wars and our own demons. Like, I can't imagine telling Nigerians who are facing Tinubu is the president of Nigeria right now, to give a flying about American politics right now. Mm-hmm. Some of them do because they're making money in dollars. Nigeria is even a terrible example of that. Mm-hmm. But like, the happening in Congo, in Rwanda right now, the world feels like it's falling apart. Even as a Black American in America, if world here feels like it's falling apart. And the Black experience is so diverse and it's so nuanced that I don't even know how to close the loop with this conversation. But empathy is so important with the conversation because the lack of empathy we have for each other is disgusting. Mm-hmm. Like, it is so frustrating to experience America and then have folks back home not understand it until they live it. Mm-hmm. And there's even the privilege of folks who maybe move here and just choose not to engage in American politics because there's a privilege in your ability to not engage in American politics. There's a huge privilege there because one day America can say, you know what? F it. Black people, take them out. What now? What then? Because in many ways, we're all look the same. It's a conversation that we are always going to have. But I wish at some point in the world, we all decide enough is enough. Wherever you're from, you look like me and you are together for whatever reason. I don't know. I get so frustrated thinking about it. Because even as we're talking about this right now, I'm thinking of my friend. So there's a TikToker, Faith Montoya, who appears, I wouldn't even say light skin. She is mixed. Like, in many ways, she's going to appear, if anything, like Puerto Rican, Honduran. She appears like she's like Hispanic, Native American in some way. And she was going through something, last week where on TikTok, folks were saying, oh, she doesn't look Black or she doesn't identify as Black. And she did a video where she said, actually, I don't identify as Black because I don't, let me even read it because I think I have it here. In recent years, I have noticed an erasure of monoracial / non-racially ambiguous Black women. That is why I think it's important to clarify that I am multiracial so that I'm not used to take up space from Black women. Essentially, what she's saying is I don't identify as Black because if a brand wants to work with me, if I say I'm Black, then I'm their token Black girl. And so because of that, I'm going to say I'm multiracial or I'm not Black so they can give the space to a Black woman. I honestly, she's probably saying like a dark-skinned Black girl, right? So she has representation. And when she said that, it made so much sense to me. But it also reminded me that we have a long way to go. Because
what
in
do you
the
think
comments,
about her statement?
It makes sense to me. Because I know for a fact
on one side of the spectrum.
Yes. No, on all sides. Because think about it. If she went on the brand trip and we're like, oh, where are the Black girls? And someone says, oh, the Faith is there. Might is going to be like, okay, no. Genuinely. I'm not even going to lie. I'm going to be like,
but is there a ripple effect to also consider by her embracing her Blackness?
Absolutely.
Right.
But there's also a power dynamic there because even within the Blackness of it, she's considered, top, she's light skin, right? The lighter skin versus a dark skin woman, right? And here's the issue, because we now come back to square one. Because now I'm sitting there going, if that's even a problem, so what then? How do we win? How do we get anywhere? Because even within that conversation of her saying, I don't say I'm Black because I don't want to take up space for another Black woman, where's the harbinger of Blackness? When do we say, okay, enough is enough? That's what I'm saying. We're all mad together. Because I don't even know how to answer that.
Donald Trump needs to eliminate?
What?
Race.
Don't let me kick you with this.
No, for real.
What does that even mean?
Because like this entire thing you're talking about, you see how you're trying to use like the spectrum of Blackness? Imagine if you eliminated that. Do you know what I mean? If you eliminate, you can't. I know you can't, but I'm just saying, like, if we were to fight for something, if race started this entire thing,
yeah,
right? If we were to fight for the erasure of, because like I don't think you can eliminate without like explanation.
Yeah, but I don't. Even if you say to eliminate that spectrum, white, the closer you are to whiteness would always still win.
Then that's the thing. Like in that case, it's not a race problem. It's a human problem and our perception of what we like and not.
No, that's not true.
No, because how do you fix that, right? Because it's in colorism, it's in entertainment, it's in...
You think about it, right? If you've been told for so long that white is right. I've heard that phrase so many times. I've also seen
from the colors, like...
Right?
White is heaven.
Exactly. So think about it from the longest time. And then you're presented to a world where the darker you are, the closer you are to the devil, or the closer you are to like whatever it is people say that's not good, essentially. In a world like that, the closer you are to whiteness, no matter what, well, it's not a human problem. It's a society problem, right? Because you still see people bleaching, right? You see people who are trying to attain this idea. And I think it's because of colonization, of slavery, of how they've told us in many ways that they're better. Right? They're more advanced. They're the more advanced civilization. Now, they're not going to talk about how they're more advanced civilization because they definitely blew other civilizations up and then, destroyed other civilizations. But that's not for me to talk about. You know what I mean? That to me is where my issue comes in.
I think people have to fight because, like, to see Black...
Who's fighting?
No, like, you have to, like...
Because if you're in a position of power, you don't give a fuck. We're the ones who might have an issue with it.
I'm talking about us. Like,
we can't find something that's...
A good example is Doechii.
Okay.
Take Doechii winning what? Best New Artist, right? And Best Rap Album.
Yes.
Right? She's like in her blackness. 100%.
Yes, for sure.
I think there's something that we do where like we always lean on those spectacles every time.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it is exhausting.
For sure.
How many people
Doechii's in mainstream though.
She isn't, right?
No, she won't ever be.
Right. But it's like, see, people were like, what's the name of that song?
Kendrick Lamar performed at the Super Bowl, and people were like, what the f is this? This was boring. This is too much. America is a crazy place to live, man.
But it makes sense, even with the talent. But you understand why? You understand why a kid in Montana is not like...
That's not true, because that's easily accessible. Spotify, go to the top 100, you find it. They just choose not to because they don't give a flying fudge.
Yeah, but that's the thing, like, why should they care?
And that's my biggest issue.
Right, because the truth is, do you listen to country artists?
I used to listen to Taylor Swift when she was a country artist.
Taylor Swift. It's like someone saying, you used to tell me he's black and you're like, Drake.
No, but definitely, I used to listen to Taylor Swift. She's a country artist. She was. But teardrops on my guitar.
Okay, do you know Billy Ray Cyrus? The only thing
that I love Billy Ray Cyrus. No, I don't. I don't know any of his songs, but I know him.
He's Miley Cyrus's dad.
Of course, I know Billy Ray Cyrus.
Okay,
what the f
Jason Mraz.
I know. I love Jason Mraz. Oh, lucky.
Dolly Parton.
Okay, I know all these people.
But there's so many
terrible
of
for
them.
you to ask.
No, I'm just giving you an example.
I actually know a lot of country artists, actually.
If I'm giving you an example. Do you
actually like country music.
Do you know Rammstein in Germany, like German metal?
Well, I don't know metal music.
I don't know. Do you know a musician? Do you know any musician like from like the Middle East?
I do.
Who?
Mahar Zain. What's that? Yes, no.
Did I?
Yeah. Ramadan. And
okay. No, I mean like a pop star. Wait. Yeah.
I don't know.
Australia.
Oh, I know porn stars from Australia.
No, that's great though.
It's true though.
Because
also that's social media. But also here's the thing.
Okay.
It is much easier for me as a black person to be interested in diverse conversations. Also, I also am pretty interested in everything. Like, I think me and you are not necessarily outliers, but we are the type of people who might go into a space and assimilate or be interested in something new. Not everybody is like that. And we know too many people who are not be interested in anything other than a specific thing. And that's not a bad or a good thing. I know a friend of mine, Aneka, she's a great TikToker, just a social media star and an artist, Jesus. She posted a video the other day where she talked about like, she doesn't judge black people. She's like, I don't judge the black person who decides to take advantage of the privilege of blackness of America and decide to be like, just use whiteness to further their own agenda because they just are like, fuck, racism is always going to exist. I'm just going to be amazing and black and like pursue whatever that's going on to the end. I don't also judge a black person who's going to be like, I'm 10 toes down black. You can't marry a white person. You have to be pro-black,
right.
Dr. Umar, because you can respond to colonization and racism however you can, because the way the structure is set up, you have no choice. Whatever you choose, I'm going to support and respect it because there's no good way to represent or like do anything with that. And I think that's why I am the way I am too. It's like when I came to America, I've quickly realized how, like, I mean, my first class in America in West Virginia, my professor called me a nigga. Like that was the first, like, I remember we had, I think I've said this story before. We had the little papers you fill out where they tell you, fill out your race. And it had Black/African-American, white, Hispanic or Latino kind of thing. And at that point, I am fresh off the boat, African, coming into this country. I was like, I don't have a blue passport. I don't think I'm Black or African-American. I'm African. I take other and I put African in the little line. And he calls me and he says, you are the same. Take Black/African-American. And I remember going, okay. I didn't give a flying fudge that he called me a nigga. I didn't even think about it. It was until I was just talking, I think, to my friends who were international students at the time, and I was like, oh yeah, my professor just called me. He's like, oh, you niggas are the same. I was like, I'm not the same. I hope I get a blue passport. Now I want to be an African American. And my friends are like, oh my days, how dare he say that? That's terrible. That's bad. And I didn't understand it. 10 years later, if someone ever told me that shit right now, oh, I'm going to go crazy. I will cuss you out. I'm going to do this because now I understand the gravity on how much of how you see me enough to know that that's really like a curse word in a way from you to me. Then I didn't get it. Does that make sense? So in many ways, America allows, like, it shapes you and molds you into something that oftentimes becomes unrecognizable because of just how the system is.
Okay, I think we can pivot to, as an African living in the United States, where's your home?
My home is here now. I lied. I tried to make it cool. Home is Nigeria. Home is always Nigeria.
I like to think home is wherever I am.
No, home is Nigeria. I shouldn't lie to myself. Amala. Jollof rice. Jo.
So, true. But also, like, I don't have that.
You do. Don't lie.
No. I don't.
You do. Your family house. No. Don't. I'm telling you.
No, I'm telling you, it's true.
When last did you go home?
Like, to my house?
Yeah. No. Just home in Nigeria is essential.
2019.
Exactly. I'm telling you, I don't mean home in the literal sense of like a roof over your head. I mean home as the feeling. Because even an African American, a Black person from around the world, when you go back home, when you go to the continent, it's a different feeling. And that's why I say, yes, you can say home is where the heart is, but genuinely, if you are open to the experience, it's a different feeling to end up in a place where everybody looks like you. The billboards, the people at the store, the voices, like everything is you. Especially if you live in America, it's a different feeling. It's something that you can't replicate. Like,
yeah, but
this is the same way as like when I say, okay, I went to Ghana, for example, right? And I rarely travel to other African countries, but I did, and I basically stayed in Ghana for like a whole month, and even Ghana felt like home, right? Not necessarily because I look around and it's me. Like, there's no code switching, there's nothing that makes me feel like an other. It simply just feels like I'm able to exist on a I don't have to pretend. I don't have to be anything except for me. That is what I feel like home symbolizes for a lot of people. And now there can be, of course, be anyone Black who might go anywhere in Africa and be like, oh, I didn't feel comfortable, I didn't feel different. If you are open to the experience, a world where you don't look different, where you're not the minority, would always feel like home.
I understand that, right? But I don't think that doesn't justify the home conversation for me. I think I appreciate the feeling. I think that's something that people should experience. But like, if my reality is like, I live in New York, this is where I'm building my life. Home has to be where I am.
No. Home is, this is my house.
No, I know what you mean, but that's what I'm saying.
Different.
Like, I
push back. I push back on that.
But I understand what you mean. You see what you said. Okay, what do you miss? The food?
No, Donald.
The people?
The feeling. Home. How do you describe what home is to you? Like, that's what I'm trying to get at, right? Like, when you're here, like, what's your favorite food that you miss from home? Let's just use food for example. What's your favorite thing? Like, if you eat it right now, you are like, holy smokes, I miss it. I might not eat it every day, but I miss it. That feeling is what I describe as home for me, right? Like, the fact that I'm able to maybe go back to Nigeria and I might go sit down at the place and I can have amala just like that, and I can sit and eat it. That feeling of, I'm not code switching, I'm not explaining anything, I'm not arguing, it's different. Like, even when you have kids here, as an adult, you're always going to go back to that feeling of home. Like, we see that in our grandparents, when they live so long in America, and they're like, yeah, I feel like it's different. I genuinely do. I think you're making it seem like, oh yeah, like wherever you are is home. And that's true.
No,
but it's not as intense of a feeling as what the reality of home is.
I understand your point. I'm trying to walk the line of you trying to find a potential solution, right? And I think if you constantly are finding that, like, the thing that makes you whole, it's far away from you, right? And you're ignoring the evolution and the reality that exists as much as...
No. Pause on that. So
give me an example.
No, I know, but I'm saying my home and my definition is because I've experienced home
and you have
I
two
have
homes.
Roots. Of course, you can have several homes.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Your definition is different. Home, New York City is my home. I live here, I work here, friends are here, everything is here. My heritage and my roots are home, and home is Nigeria for me. Now, here's my thing. Being African American, home can never be Africa, because there's nowhere to go. You're going to build a home there,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I think we as Africans have a sense of entitlement towards people who don't live on the continent or who aren't from the continent. From is loose here.
Mm-hmm.
Because we say like, oh, why don't you find out where you're from and go there or something like
Right,
that? Like
right,
it's
right.
easy when it's not fucking easy. But for that situation, if you can't trace your ancestry to some village in Africa, and you're telling me, as someone who has lived my entire life in Detroit, I need to find a home in Ghana or in Kenya or something, it makes no sense to me because that's
Right.
not my home. However, the feeling of home, and home as in safety, community,
Mm-hmm.
is always going to be present in Africa for anybody of Black descent. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's a tough statement to make.
It's not.
It's tough. You know why? It's tough because
it's not.
If you think about the kid who grew up in Detroit, right? Even if he has traveled to LA or whatever for college, whatever, even if he has made it to the NBA, the NFL, his life experience and what home means to him and the feeling he gets when, you know, he's at the NFL is playing and Kendrick Lamar is performing and he's hearing the national anthem, even regardless of all the fight that exists, to that person, home is not Africa.
No. Again, we talk about home as in community and safety. That is absolutely valid.
Okay.
That can also be true, as well as the fact that living or visiting the continent is also something that would bring up the feeling of home too.
Right.
I can argue
No, 100%.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, in many ways, the fact alone that you have community there is going to trump any of that.
Potential community.
It is community. No matter what it is. It might not be the best community, but it's community. If you find your own people, just fucking landing.
Yeah.
Landing and seeing that everybody at immigration, it looks like you. Are you kidding me? Like, it evokes an emotion I don't think anyone can ever fully explain or make tangible. Because it's just a different feeling. Like, it was someone that said the other day, like, going somewhere where the billboards are all you, dark skin, light skin, thick, thin, everything, just you.
You know what America feels like? I remember the first time I landed in America.
Stimulation.
It feels like a dystopia.
It is.
It feels like a video game.
It is.
When you land at the airport and you see like the lineup of like those like the people who check your passport, they look like robots.
They are.
That have been placed there.
Yeah.
And there's like the video playing of like, America is good, America is great, America is
like,
good.
It's different. And I think that divide is what I always struggle with within the Black community, because I wish we all just understood that we are the same at the core. Like, in many ways, like humans are the same at the core. But Black folks, we are the same at the core. Our experiences are all the same. Like, even when we talk about like the African versus African American video on Jubilee that I brought up about 50 million times, all the things where, oh, your parents are strict, and they're like, oh, your African American experience is strict too. Yes, and also African parents are strict. Like, it's a universal experience to be Black. Point blank, period. You can argue that down. It's a universal experience. It might be different. So maybe like your parents from Atlanta are different. It's a lie. Can't be argued that.
You think it's a universal experience to be human?
Of course. But also not really.
But in a way, white people are different. Because every time
Asian
I try to do this social experiment, no. Like when we talk about like
Asians are more similar to Black
exactly
people.
right.
That's true.
Everyone else around the world, aside from these people, they're built different. Yeah. There's something in it. I don't understand it, but it's something is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I feel you.
Okay, so let's shift gears for a second.
Tell me.
Okay, so we've talked about Black people being the minority.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know about the executive order that Trump just signed.
Oh, you told me about that earlier.
Okay, so I don't have we don't have a lot of education on this, on like apartheid and all of that. But do you want to read the executive order?
Not really. I don't want to read the whole thing. But basically, we're talking about Blackness and whatever. And I think one of my the only, honestly, at this point, understanding of like versus whiteness versus Blackness is in South Africa, right? So if you don't know, South Africa is a country in Africa, of course, and they had a system called apartheid where white people who were the minority in the case honestly just implemented a certain level of like a sort of slavery, honestly, for Black people there. So they took all the land. Apartheid was basically just white people were better, Black people were subservient to whiteness.
Yeah, segregation.
So segregation, essentially. So right now, Trump signed an executive order where he basically said that in a shocking disregard of its citizens' rights, the Republic of South Africa recently enacted Expropriation Act 13 to enable the government of South Africa to seize ethnic minority Afrikaners' agricultural property without compensation. What he's saying is the government of South Africa, realizing that, well, all the white people, because of apartheid, have all the land, they can seize the land of agricultural property, make it the government's land, so now they can spread the wealth across all South Africans. And Elon Musk is, of course, the one in Trump's ear talking about how white South Africans essentially are complaining about this and feeling like they're going through their own version of discrimination. So he's essentially implementing a sort of DEI, a sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation here. Where he talked about the act follows countless government policies designed to dismantle equal opportunity in employment, education, and business, hateful rhetoric in government actions, fueling disproportionate violence against racially disfavored landowners. Racially disfavored landowners. In addition, South Africa has taken aggressive positions towards the United States and its allies, including accusing Israel, not Hamas, of genocide in the International Court of Justice. Essentially, the U.S. is saying we side with South Africa, we side with Elon Musk and white South Africans to continue to perpetrate some level of apartheid, because there's still apartheid in South Africa if you've heard the stories and stuff. Donald was talking to me about this when we were talking about like the podcast in general, and I just smirked because our problem is plenty.
No, because this man said the United States shall promote the resettlement of Afrikaner refugees escaping government-sponsored race-based discrimination, including racially discriminatory property confiscation. Like, how can you have, or you want to deport illegal migrants, but at the same time it's like you want to bring in white refugees, like specifically saying white refugees. Yeah. And like there are a lot of conversations. Somebody was like, oh, one of the reasons why Elon is doing it because apparently if you want to, like, you know, his Starlink internet thing, if you want to bring Starlink into or any company, if you want to come to South Africa, there's a law that like the company needs to be 30% owned by like a black or like someone, like an indigenous person. I didn't know that, okay. Yeah. And someone's like, oh, like that's one of the reasons why like he's trying to like fight the whole thing because he's not able to get, because like South Africa is a big market in Africa, right? Yeah. But it's just like, it makes the entire thing exhausting because, you know, everything we've talked about with, you know, and that's why I say, like, I think all of this is intentional. I don't think they're dumb at all. I think they're very intelligent, crafty people. Like, they know exactly what they're doing. Yeah. And I think a lot of times, like, we face it with, like, oh, this is ridiculous, this is ridiculous. No, it's not ridiculous. It's not. You're in a war and, like, you're not reacting because you're trying to keep your sanity. Yeah. It's like, imagine being a black person in South Africa and reading
stuff like this. How do you navigate it? I say this, okay? South Africa is such a special case because it shows us that even when white people are the minority, they still hold power, right? And they still hold and continue to implement systems that will continue to bring black people down. Now, here's the thing. In this conversation, we don't say we don't like white people, right? But I like to remind people often that your blackness is always going to be weaponized against you in any place you are that's outside of Africa. And even now, in many ways, it's still weaponized against you even within the continent itself. And that is exhausting. So why don't we just all work together? Right. Like, what does it look like? And I feel like I can dream, right? Because someone like me, and just like in general, I like to say, me and Donald say we're chameleons, we're shapeshifters, because I'm able to talk to everyone. I like to be able to talk to everyone. Yeah. I like to be interested in like black culture and African culture and just culture in general. Well, I think it's because I sit on the cusp of that, right? Like, because of our history and our upbringing, we're able to sit on the cusp. Well, how can I convince Africans who are from home to be interested in the Black experience and Black folks who are from America to be interested in the African experience? And that is hard because even then, these two are not the only Black folks in the world. Like, they're Black Brazilians, Afro-Latinos, stuff like Jamaicans, Caribbeans, like Blackness in general. And I don't have the answer for that. But again, in this episode, I hope we're able to just start thinking through empathy. Yeah. Because it should never be us versus us. Right. Like, in any shape or form. It should never be us versus us. It should never be our people versus the other people who look exactly like us. And even if they don't look like us, who identify as us, who the others people might say they're us, like it should never be that. And hopefully the bridge continues to build, and I see it happening slowly. But we're gonna bring this up. I'm gonna just talk about it now. Children of Blood and Bone, the casting. It's a big example of how we're still so far apart.
Yeah.
So that's such a good example of the Black diaspora not understanding impact and awareness in so many ways. So maybe I have an unpopular take about the casting of Children of Blood and Bone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know, Children of Blood and Bone is a book by Tomi Adeyemi.
Tomi Adeyemi.
I was right. Okay. Yeah. Tomi Adeyemi. She's of African descent. So her parents are African. I think she's first generation Nigerian. Her name is Yoruba. And she wrote a fantasy, a sort of Yoruba fantasy. Now, I like to say it reminds me of Harry Potter because the book is essentially fantasy. It's no reality. It's no biography. It's fantasy. Like the names of the actors, the story she's saying, the language she's using, it draws inference and, you know, what's the word? It draws inspiration from being Yoruba, but for the most part, it is fantasy. Like some of the main characters' name starts as a Z. There's no Z in the Yoruba language. So in many ways, it's not fact. It's fiction. And this is huge. Like this could be the next Wakanda, right? For African Americans in America, right? And I say that with a comma or asterisk, I guess. So she points out casting. She brings out casting. And I remember when she was going through the casting process, because the book is really huge. And she's going through the casting process and she mentions like, oh, I might be casting some Nigerians, you know, folks to come in. They're doing some big casting in Nigeria. I think she casted in Nigeria and some other places in Africa. And then when they finally announced the cast, it was like top hitters, Black actors. Now, when I say Black, I mean African Americans, so Black Americans and British Americans. I think Damson Idris, I think, is British, right? So British Americans, most of them do have African descent. So there's a South African actress there.
Idris Elba.
Idris Elba is, like they all have African descent, but in many ways they're not African. So they're not Nollywood, they're Hollywood.
Yeah.
Boom. Nollywood is the Nigerian's version of Hollywood. And so there was a lot of flack from Nigerians talking about how this casting is like terrible. Like I thought she was going to bring up like Nigerians up there. And my argument was, I don't think it makes sense to do that. I think it made sense for her to use the people she used because she, with her background, is telling a story that she's open to get a lot of eyes on. If you're trying to sell a story like that to IMAX, to Warner Brothers, to Universal, you want the top actors to lead that. And in America, if you're trying to sell in America, why in God's name would you hire a Nigerian actor to do that role? If anything, too, we're forgetting visa issues, communication to like who's going to do what and how, like it's different. It's so different than if this was Kunle Afolayan telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I was saying. I was like, maybe in my dream world, this iteration of Children of Blood and Bone should happen. And then she should also sell the rights to the film to Kunle Afolayan. So he creates a version of the story that would also be as equally as powerful, because there can be two stories told because it's fantasy. Like the same way there's a Harry Potter on Broadway and then there's J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter, there could be different versions of this story. Of course, that's not going to be possible because she's already sold the rights to, I think, Universal, whoever is in charge. But I didn't understand because I think she went for economic power and strategy rather than like anything else. And when people were talking about, oh, they think she should have been more Nigerian or African, I was like, why? Because this is fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And the people, everybody who is casted in so many ways have African backgrounds. So is this a form of self-hate? Is this a form of representation? Because this is fantasy. Now, if we're talking about Idris Elba doing a Chinua Achebe Things Fall Apart movie, because I know I think that's the movie. I'm not sure if that's it. He's doing a movie right now. I think it's Things Fall Apart. And the issue there is also like, why is Idris Elba the one telling the story? Why not it be some, African actor or whatever?
Nobody picked it up.
No, that's where the money is. He has the money. He has the funds. And do we negate their experience?
The question is, does he though?
What do you mean?
And like, does he actually have the funds?
He does. He has a whole production studio in Africa now.
That's what I'm saying, to an extent, right? Like but that's why he's doing all that work, right?
No, he's not even casted anybody. He's just simply said he's buying the
That he
rights
wants
and
to
he
do,
wants
yeah.
to do it, and
Yeah.
he wants to be the lead. Because I get frustrated when Africans gatekeep stories like that, and Africans gatekeep the African experience for people who they don't think are African enough. And I also get frustrated when African Americans or Black Americans gatekeep the African American experience from people who they don't think are African American enough. I get upset when British Africans, I guess was what you describe them, also do the same thing. Because in many ways, at the core of it, it's everybody saying you are not X, Y, and Z enough to tell the story. But also, these same people are, because they identify as that. Like my friend Faith having to say, I don't want to identify as Black. I'm going to erase a part of my history because I don't want to make you uncomfortable, has nothing to do with white people, but everything to do with Black people coming at her. That is unfortunate for me, because why are we arguing? Why are we tussling over that? How is that a problem for us? You know what I mean? Like, this insider fight that we do is never, ever, ever to uplift each other. It's to bring ourselves down. And then the person who's spinning the hamster wheel continues spinning it and spinning it and spinning it and spinning it. And we don't even know they're spinning it because we're so focused on the infighting that we forget that. Because at this point, this is a movie that's being made, a huge fantasy that could be bigger than Black Panther and all this stuff.
What do you think is people's reason? Like, do you think they're like hurt and disappointed?
No, I think it's like protectiveness.
Like the lack of,
no, it's being protective of your culture, which is true. Like, imagine, and I get it. This is me not saying.
But they also hurt too, though.
That's where protectiveness comes in, right? Like, I think I'll feel some type of way if someone wants to tell a Yoruba story and they don't want to say it well. I feel like, honestly, I wish I was casted as Amari for Children of Blood and Bone. It's natural because I feel like I can tell that story well. However, I don't negate or want to take that away from another Black person who's playing it, because I don't think they're enough of a Black person to do that. Because who is measuring? You know what I mean? Who's measuring this Blackness of some sort? And also, why does it only have to be a certain type of person who can do a certain type of thing? That to me is where my issue comes in, right? I think at the end of the day, unity is what we should be seeking. And when we're constantly doing the infighting, we don't get anywhere.
So in the case of Children of Blood and Bones, right?
Yeah.
In that casting, do you think unity was taken into consideration?
I do. The people on that cast are diverse as fudge.
No, they're not.
How? All those people, have they ever been in one project together? No. They've never. What are we calling as diverse? That she should have picked someone who's Jamaican, someone who's Nigerian, someone South African? If she wanted to be true to the book, everybody in that fantasy book should have been Yoruba. That makes no sense to the story, right? Because it's a fantasy. Everybody she picked there, if we look at their parents, one of them is Nigerian, one of them is South African, some of them have Ghanaian parents, some of them have Kenyan parents. There's descendants of Africa in that story. Like, they all are. And yes, I know the accent is about to be trash. We're scared. I'm scared for the accent. I know it's going to be terrible. I don't fault them for it. I can't fault them for that. No matter how hard,
I don't think it's a fault, right?
No matter how hard I try to make an American accent, yes, I might sound American, but what America am I sounding like? Do I sound New York? Do I sound Louisiana?
I understand what you're saying, right? But like, you're coming from like unity. And I think they're bold decisions, which these are not easy.
Yeah.
That have to be made.
Yeah.
In that cast, they didn't try, and the reason, we know the reason. No, the reason is because.
What are you right now?
Let me give you an example.
The cast we have, I don't want to interrupt you. The cast we have are the top main characters, right? Yes. And they've given us 6 or 7 people. Right? We don't know who else is going to be casted. And I know firsthand there are so many people who, the intention they have behind making sure this is an African story. So they've definitely done their due diligence to hire a ton of Africans living in Africa to play a lot of other roles within the movie. All they did in this instance is make sure the top players are African American / British American / the big known faces of Hollywood, because again, they are selling this movie to Hollywood.
I agree. I don't think that's enough. How? And the reason is because to me that's a cop out. It's a cop out because to me, people are not why people go to see movies. Stories are why people go to see movies.
Not if you're black. I push back.
Again. But see, that's the thing. That's the eggshell that we constantly would have to work on.
No. Captain America is going to flop because it's a black man.
Right.
We know that for a fact. No matter how much he argues.
No.
Hold on. Chloe Bailey.
That's my point.
Marseille Martin.
That's my point.
Whole video for Disney, and it just went.
You see what you just said?
What?
That's my point.
That what?
You said the movie is going to flop.
It will flop.
Exactly.
Why?
So what is to me? The people on that cast are not going to move the numbers.
They will.
They
absolutely
Let me give you an example.
Tell me.
When Harry Potter was cast.
Yes.
Who went to see Harry Potter because of the actors?
Harry Potter was written by a white woman. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. That's not the game.
No. That's the game we fucking play.
Should I tell you why? Let me give you an example.
Tell me.
A good example is Tyler Perry.
Okay.
Right.
Also, I hope you know Tyler Perry on the scale of blackness and black movies to mainstream success is very different.
The green lighting of that movie, and the cast that we're seeing
of what?
Of Children of Blood and Bones.
Yes.
It's
the perfect cast for that.
No, it's not a perfect cast.
It's the perfect cast.
No. Should I tell you the hat you're wearing? You're wearing the hat. No.
No, wallahi, I'm not.
No.
I swear, I have
the hat I'm talking about?
What hat's that?
You're wearing the hat of an American woman who does business.
No. I'm wearing the hat of someone of, no offense, common sense. Let me tell you why.
No, I don't agree. Let me tell you why.
The only reason you think that should have been better is because you're saying this story is written by an African.
No.
Then why? Why should this casting be different? If this was written by an African American woman with no ties to Africa and she casted that thing, would your argument be different?
I don't think.
Right now we're fighting over what Tomi Adeyemi's identity is when it shouldn't be our.
No, I don't care about identity.
So why is this?
I care about the story that was written.
The story is. Have you read the book?
No.
So why did you argue with me? Nigga, don't piss me
off. Wait.
What?
This is my point.
Tell me.
My point. You look at that cast. And what I see is 100% selectiveness in people that like they know is going to drive people to go watch this movie.
That's unfair to those people, though.
No, that's not the good thing. No. Hey, because again, I can also argue in that same statement that all those people that people are like, oh my God, people are going to rush. Please, those people, they're not as big of actors. Like they're not going to shake the box office as we think. Please, Idris Elba, what movie has he done in the box office? What movie has he done in the box office?
It's all about name recognition. In this particular situation, but he's also talented. Here's my thing:
they're all talented.
No, and that's why I'm like, that's why they're the perfect cast. Who could have replaced any of those people? If you argue and say
who could have replaced them?
Yes.
No. I'm not talking about replacement.
Then what are you talking about?
They're perfect.
So what are you talking about?
But like, you're trying to tell me that out of that entire main cast, if they held auditions to find like raw talent in Africa, like they couldn't.
Again, No. This is not an issue. Anybody could have played Olivia Pope in Scandal, but they picked Olivia Pope.
Yeah, but hold on. Even that was a risk.
Hold on, right? In this particular situation, everybody.
Oh my God, that's a great example.
Well,
you just gave a great example.
Yes, I'm trying to tell you.
Kerry Washington.
Yeah,
that was a risk.
It was. In this situation, that entire cast is a risk.
No.
Yes.
That's not a risk.
Yes, it is.
That's not a risk.
For an American movie trying to go out.
That's not a risk.
Putting Captain America as this guy is a risk.
No.
Let me say. In America in general. No. I push back.
No. Okay.
I push back.
Oh my God. The America argument?
Yeah.
Should I give you my theory?
Okay. Tell me.
Oh my God, this is so bad. You know how like in business, there's like a budget.
Yes.
And like in the movie business, especially when it comes to Marvel, they can make movies and they can think big picture because the movies in Marvel all add up to like a big story.
Yes.
And not all movies need to make money.
Yes.
So they're not approaching it the same way.
Yes.
So them giving him his movie is a part of a timeline. Not necessarily like if they were betting on this Captain America franchise as like this is a movie.
It's just for a stepping stone to something.
Wouldn't be made. Captain Marvel wouldn't be made.
Yes.
The movie with the Marvels wouldn't be made.
For sure.
Green Hawk, the She-Hulk wouldn't have been made.
Absolutely.
You get my point?
Yes.
So it's not the same conversation.
Okay.
With Olivia Pope, when Kerry Washington was cast, like they thought it was gonna flop.
Yes.
But the numbers.
Yes.
And that's why I think like if Chino Brown Rose, if they had actually shaped, they're giving us like a fresh space. Because this conversation that we're having right now, we shouldn't be having it.
No.
This hurts the movie.
It doesn't. You know why? Because the only people who are arguing about this are Africans. African Americans think that's a beautiful cast. You know why?
Of course, but they're not the only ones going to see the movie though.
Yes, they are. It's a Hollywood movie.
Yeah, no.
No, yes. No, it's a Hollywood movie.
But like Africa counts in that regard.
No.
If you're trying to shake the numbers
at the core, Africans don't even count
because that's not going to
that's a juju book. Are you kidding me? Have you listened to that book? You're telling me Orisha is jumping up and down. Don't let me put my accent outside.
I was in the cinema in Nigeria.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, but Kunle Afolayan is not telling them. Oh, what we know is juju that we know. That
no.
Sorry, I'm going to switch up real quick. The juju that we know Kunle Afolayan is talking about, we know the juju firsthand. The one told me he was telling us is, oh, Orisha said come and stay there, and they were going to Ile Ifa and Kiniko. It's different. So even in that scenario, she's not selling that book to Africans. She's selling that book. She's doing fantasy. Like this girl, I don't know her. I really don't, right? But in my understanding, as someone who's passionate and wants to share more of the stories that her family has sent to her, it doesn't make any sense to not have that cast be as stacked as it is, to give it more of a fighting chance within the American box office. Now, if none of the supporting characters are of African descent, like Africans living in Africa, that might be a different conversation. But even then, it doesn't need to happen because that's not the story. We have people telling our fucking stories. Nollywood is Nollywood for a reason. Why are we looking to Hollywood? Because again, we're trying to negate her connection as being African American. Because people were like, oh, like I knew the story was terrible because once I saw the main character's name was Z and it was not really Yoruba.
No, I think those ones they're just like, I feel like Africans we joke too much. It's
not a joke. This is people who are serious. It is. Because mind you, some people who have never actually read it, because you've never read the book. The book itself is fully Harry Potter, right? Mm-hmm. And if I'm imagining, generally, if I'm reading that book, I'm imagining it. The cast is so great for it. I promise you, like reading the book and seeing the cast, it makes sense to me. And of course, we always would argue that we wish they had first, like Wicked with Cynthia and Ariana Grande. People argued so many times that why didn't they get fresh people to do Wicked? And it was a choice to have Ariana Grande, who's like an incredible singer. What do you mean?
Those are fresh people though.
Who?
Like Ariana, to be honest, like to play Glinda, do you see the other options? Those people are more Hollywood than Ariana. You don't think so? Come on. You don't think so? Cynthia, you think come on.
Cynthia maybe is more or like less of you.
Jonathan Bailey?
Are you kidding me?
Those are fresh faces.
They're not. Don't pick. You are vexing me. No. Because your Abijah or first face, big face is different. What's in Bimenu? Because what are you talking about?
No, you're not getting my point.
Sam, Abi Cat. What's her name from Nickelodeon?
Yeah, that's different though.
What's different there about it?
No, it's different.
It's inside the trash.
Sam and Cat. After that, what?
Everything else. She's a Grammy Award-winning singer.
Yeah, but that's even that's
everybody argues it was a couple. Like they could have found raw Broadway talent that could be adapted to the main screen.
It won't have worked though.
That's what I'm telling you.
It won't have worked because
in this situation, this is the only thing that works.
You see my point? My point is, I love casting Ariana because of how he pairs with Cynthia.
So look at it. Are you telling me right now Viola Davis is not the perfect person to play that role?
I think Viola Davis is perfect.
I would say everybody
I want to remove from the cast.
Who?
From the cast?
Idris Elba.
No, I think it's just no.
Who do you want to remove? Tell me.
Regina King.
Huh?
Regina King.
Regina King?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
I just feel like
who do you want to put Stella Damascus?
First of all,
don't piss me off.
No.
Who?
You know what I'm thinking?
Who?
What's her name?
Who?
I don't know her name.
Timini's sister?
No.
Dekoreguson.
BC. What's her name?
Yeah. Bisola.
Yes.
You want?
Yes. Think about it. She will in that role. She'll give it all she can.
She will give it all
exactly.
What's a different story to be told?
I agree with your point.
I swear, the American market is so different.
You remember Divergent?
Yes.
Who knew all those people? Who knew Shelley Woodley?
Of course. They're white. It's a different conversation. Like every time, I'm telling you, like every time I look at stuff like that, I understand the fight. Like, and I swear, you guys, like it might sound so annoying to because I saw a friend of mine do a take about Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance. She's like, "Oh, I just want to have fun. I just want to listen to music. I don't want to break it down." It's a fucking privilege to live in America and say you don't want to care about race. It's in our face every day. I live in a penthouse luxury apartment in New York. Every time I walk in, even the fact that my concierge knows me, the people in the building look at me second ways to see where I'm going to, simply because I live here and I can afford to live here.
Yeah.
When I go out to get groceries, I'm still followed around. No matter how much I want to say, it doesn't matter. It does. When I speak, "Oh, you speak so well. Oh, you're doing this. Oh, you're not African. Where's your accent?" Race is so present in America. Trump is putting people in handcuffs, in this country because of what they look like. White people will tell you every day, go back to where you're from. It's a conversation that has to happen. It's a privilege to not think it would. So when people like Tommy decide to do a movie like Children of Blood and Bone, and she has the money and the power and the backing of big studios like that are filled with fucking white men, she's playing into the system because she has to. She has to. Now, our power and why I wish we had more unity is support. And I know there's always that argument of blind support.
No, I think
that, oh my God, like why should we how should we as Black people have to support just because it's Black? You cannot argue and tell me that cast isn't fucking perfect.
No.
That's a good cast for a Hollywood movie of that caliber, for an author who's never had a movie
because
before.
All those people, to be honest, even Viola was saying,
think about it from
with the Woman King.
Yes,
Viola, that was like her first,
and she got like these are people. We all know Viola Davis, but Viola Davis might not be white people popular.
Yeah, she's not.
Even if she's done How to Get Away with Murder.
Yeah.
Even Idris Elba too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, all of them. They're technically like...
all of them are like Black famous.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So even within that, even Damson Idris concept is even smaller than that. Yeah. We're like, I'm a lot of money now. Shit.
But the only girl that probably crosses over is, what's her name? Amanda.
And even then she doesn't, because she had to post a video on TikTok where she was talking about having to explain herself as to how she got the role. And it's so frustrating to see these things happen, because when we have these conversations, you're like, it's the infighting.
Yeah.
And it's
she did the same thing for Black Panther.
Yeah.
Where she turned down the role.
She has to, like, imagine having to argue your Blackness because people are saying you're not Black enough, which I understand because I'm a dark-skinned Black woman too. I get it. In situation, I get it. I so get it. But it's also something I have to also say it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think people should stop having like preferences with Blackness.
Within the story, like describing the girl as mocha can be a big caramel. Am I caramel? Am I brown? Am I chocolate? Am I dark chocolate? Am I milk chocolate? Am I honey? Am I truffle? No! But clearly, Blackness is chocolate. It's just different. And
who's lighter between me and you?
Who's what?
Lighter.
Yeah. This is what you want to ask me right now?
Who bright spots?
I feel like I'm lighter.
You think so?
I don't know, actually.
It depends on the light.
Okay, well,
depends on the sun. Maybe when you're home. When you're home. No, honestly, in Africa, we get darker though. Yeah.
The point is, I think
too much Vaseline.
I think the casting was perfect. I think there's a lot of battles we have to fight as Black people. And at some point, maybe in 2 years, maybe in 20 years, maybe in 10 years, we're going to all figure out that the
point is we're going to see the movie.
And the fight should be more outside.
Yeah.
I think unity is always going to win. But then we have people like fucking Kanye West doing some crazy shit, and then I can't argue with
that man needs to be ignored.
I'm sorry.
Everyone needs to go see Captain America. I'm going to make a video.
You should.
I'm telling you.
Let's do
we need to go see Captain America.
Let's move on. Okay, let's get to some really light conversation and before we end the podcast today. Cultural shocks. Your first time in America. I can go first and then you go first. Do you have a few?
Culture shock?
Yeah. Little things that surprised you when you came here. My one is like the chicken. The chicken in America stunned me. That shit was thick. Like that chicken is fat as fuck. Oh my days. American Walmart chicken. I've never seen chicken thighs that big. Chicken legs. I didn't know chicken could have legs like that. I've never seen big chickens like that. But American food is so bad for you.
Yeah.
It's so much sugar. And when I moved here, I just felt sick and bloated and just unwell. And I realized the food in America is so It's not even fresh. Like they put GMO, non-GMO, fresh, natural, organic. It's a lie. It's all a scam. You are eating sugar, probiotic, prebiotic or biotic. You are eating nonsense. This country is crazy with food, and they don't know. Maybe they do know. They don't give a fuck. But that was my biggest thing.
Yeah, but how would they know though?
Exactly. That's why like most of my food now I have to get it from like the halal market or
You
like
do eat pretty clean, yeah.
I eat very clean. Like I don't play. Yeah. I also can't stomach it. Like if I eat American food, it's nasty. People always ask me like, what do I eat? And I don't know, like cook a lot. Like I cook. I spend all day today cooking because I just can't. I can't eat American food. Oh, I need to make rice and beans. Sorry, Randall. What about you?
Oh, mine was how much the cabs cost.
Cabs.
Taxi. So I landed at JFK.
Yeah.
And I took the yellow cab.
Okay. Sorry.
To the middle of Manhattan. And you know, at the back of the cab, you have like the price, and it's always like counting. So I saw the price going up.
Going up. JFK to Manhattan. I'm so sorry.
It was like $20, $30,
yeah,
$40, $50.
How much did you pay?
It was like $70.
Yeah, no.
That was my first expense.
Yeah, no.
And I came here with $500.
Yeah, I feel that. Mine, another one for me was the individualism versus community here. America is a very individual society. Like, it's not in the South, maybe they have a lot more community, but for the most part here, like, there's a lot more loneliness in this country than otherwise. Like, every man fends for himself. Like, if you live in your apartment, sometimes if you're a person who lives
when did you realize that though?
Immediately.
Really?
Immediately. I didn't have anyone when I came here. Remember, like, you had your sister, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have that. Like, I had my uncle and my auntie in Maryland, but I was in college, and I had Africans in school who were community. Even for me, it made sense to like realize, oh shoot, everybody's going through their own stuff, and the struggle is real.
Ooh, culture shock. Dating.
Really? Tell me.
Because I never dated a white girl until I came here. Why are you rolling your eyes?
On the Black History Month episode, you want to talk about dating white women? Let me know if it starts with you. Black men and their self-hatred for each other. I don't want to diss their race.
No. But I didn't see it as like, oh my God, I'm dating a white person.
No, you saw it as I can't say what I want to say.
I didn't see it as I was dating a white person.
I don't have this
I think the difference was I've never like gone out into the world and had so many people look at me and give me looks. So like I'm sitting on the train and I'm getting looks like I'm doing something wrong. Or like something is like...
That's that you're trying to change your mouth. Like,
no, that's what I was going to say.
You're lying. What he's trying to say is that I'll show when the boy. She's a man. You're okay. You are not show. I told him all the time that he enjoys proximity to whiteness.
That's not true.
When you first...
You have way more proximity than me.
Don't know, you're lying. You're a black man. White women love you. Exactly. All right. I think my biggest thing also is what we talked about is like people not liking you because of your skin color. I approach America with the arrogance every Nigerian does of like, I'm royalty. I don't care who call me. I'm a bad bitch. And to have someone white, honestly, for the most part, or I had some black African Americans too, like look down at me as like the African of this. It never made sense to me because in my head I didn't understand why or how. So people not liking for your skin color, your background was new to me. Usually I'm used to, maybe it was financial stuff, like you're broke or you're poor. That's why people like look down on you. So that was a huge difference.
It's like you can't really place it.
I don't understand. I never
understood. Your self-esteem is really high, so it's kind of like.
At that point I didn't even know what self-esteem. I just thought it was like natural. Like, of course I am a bad bitch.
Like yeah.
I am me. And so for someone to simply look at me and say I am less than they are because of the color of my skin.
I didn't necessarily like saying it, or is it?
I've had someone say less than, but it's inferred in the way they approach me, the conversations they have, and just the spaces I'm in. That was a huge shock for me. I think that's the whole point of this episode, right? It's like at the end of the day, like we're all black in the American context, and if we live in this country, that's exactly what ends up happening to us. But yeah, guys, that is the end of today's episode of Am I Too Loud, the podcast with Sophie, aka the Odditty, and Donald. This was a very intense episode. I feel like the clips we're going to get out of this episode are going to be crazy. Hopefully we just didn't ramble a lot and we actually just made some sense. This is going to have a lot of you in the comments. I know it. So I can't wait to see or hear what you guys think. You say hello to the camera. You say hello. That's Mr. Kovu. He's my light-skinned dog. But yeah, guys, that is the end of today's episode. We love you very much, and we will see you in our next episode. Let us know in the comments what kind of episodes you guys want to hear, what you want to see. There's a lot to share, honestly, and we're oftentimes very vulnerable, even at the risk of a lot of things in the American context. So we'll see you when we see ya. I love you guys very much. Say bye, Donald.
Go watch Captain America.
Y'all, please go watch Captain America and watch Children of Bodom when it comes out. Shooting already started.
We need it.
We love you. Bye, guys.